I'm Dan Drake. This is Visitor Network TV, and today we have back for the first time in a year, Bruce Miller.
Has it really been that long?
It's been that long,
wow.
And you were actually on my first show.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I'm honored. I was honored. I wasn't as honored as I should have been, I guess, but retrospectively,
we're still here. I'm still here.
Congratulations.
You're still here.
So this is your first anniversary?
More or less.
Wow, that's great.
So
we both survived.
We both survived.
A tumultuous year.
I think maybe yours. Well, mine's been interesting, but I think yours has been more interesting, and that's what we want to talk about.
Yeah, I think last year yours was more interesting.
That's
I
right.
think this year's.
Well, we're still dealing with a building.
So,
and when we get that done, things hopefully will quiet down. But by the way, we're not putting a plaque in the building.
Well, you're making such great progress. I mean, it's really been.
Thank you.
It's been fun to watch from a distance.
What's on your mind now about the town? What are the hot issues from your perspective?
Well, to state the obvious, I mean, Baxter Road is about as hot as you can get. But I think a more interesting issue that ties into Baxter Road is that I really feel at the moment as if the system is pretty overwhelmed. I mean, we're pretty close to being maxed out between Baxter Road in particular. But Baxter Road has really been a all hands on deck fire drill for weeks, if not months now. And it really puts a tremendous strain on the system to be able to deal with it, particularly Libby's office, but also Andrew Vorse and Kara. And that's just one item that's being worked on. We're about to start budget season.
Right.
Libby had to deal with a special town meeting. We've got we have the discussion about whether the hospital wants to move to town property.
Right.
We've got the future of the island home to deal with. You add it all up, and then you are tempted to wonder when we ever get around to dealing with day-to-day business. And so that's not really an answer to your question, but I think as a community we need to start thinking about whether our system is capable of dealing with the issues that we have to deal with in 2013. Because they're always out there. It's not,
as you know, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. If it wasn't Baxter Road, it would be Bartlett Farm Road. If it wasn't the hospital, it would be the airport. I mean, as you know, we're one of only two communities that operates a nursing home. We have an airport. Not every community has an airport. We have a water company.
Well, you have a big airport.
We have a busy airport.
Busy airport.
Right. We have a landfill. We have a water company. We have a population that sextuples between March and June, which is a management challenge in and of itself. So, I just think we need to start seriously thinking about what we could do differently to make it more manageable.
Do you think there's a will to do that?
I think there's more of a will than there used to be. And I think with a number of these issues that used to be like, third rails, like downtown parking, for example, I think people are really starting to realize that we have to start making some changes. I mean, they aren't necessarily going to be happy about them, but 5 years ago, I think if you'd talked about paid parking downtown, there would have been a huge rebellion. We tried a little experiment this year. There was almost no negativity. People who used it
was
loved
it successful? That's what you're talking about, the valet parking.
Yeah.
I
think it was. Yeah, I think it was a significant success. I mean, I don't know. Financially, it probably wasn't a huge success, but about almost 2,000 people used it. 50% more used it in August than in July. So it was, as people discovered it, they used it. And we've got some other things we're working on. We have in the capital programs budget next year a request to spend some money to upgrade the municipal lot, which we think can, just between resurfacing it, painting new lines, and then maybe expanding it a little bit, we think we can create 30 or 40 parking places.
That'd be fabulous.
And Bob Gardner has, when we've been doing the sewer work, he's been relocating some hydrants, which has created some spots. We repainted a lot of yellow lines, which created some spots. So it all, on a cumulative basis, it really helped. But it wasn't enough because we're barely keeping up. And I think there were some days in August where the problem wasn't so much parking, but I think there were days in August where certain parts of the island, traffic approached a gridlock.
But if you look at the steamship numbers, I haven't focused on them probably as much as I should have, but if you look at the steamship numbers, my recollection is there wasn't that big an increase in the number of vehicles coming over here.
which makes you wonder where all the traffic is coming from.
That's right.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
We should know. Maybe more service vehicles. Landscape. I just don't know.
Yeah,
but there were
interesting.
Old South Road. There were some times Old South Road when it really seemed like it was going to back up, eventually back up out to the airport.
I saw the corner at the high school backed up to the Sea Grill one day, which is a lot of cars waiting to get through that intersection.
Yeah.
Long wait.
And it used to be that if you knew your way around, you could avoid some of those intersections. But just about everybody's discovered them now.
I still have a method.
A
it still works.
You can tell me after we go off the air. But so anyway, I think a lot of us are starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed, and to do anything differently would take years. There'd have to be a charter commission put together, but I think we have to start thinking about it. We're almost unmanageable.
And staffing is an issue as well. I mean, not only do you have sort of the governance issue and the ability to get you as an elected official, a member of the Board of Selectmen, getting your hands around things, but having the staffing that can deal with it and do the homework that is necessary to be done on a lot of these issues, which is now, the staffing's very limited.
No, and they're all in survival mode. I mean, the idea that any of our existing staff, or most of them, have the opportunity to say, well, I'm going to set aside my day-to-day job and spend significant hours working on a long-term plan or a special project is almost inconceivable.
Yeah. And you have obviously a fine balance. You don't want to create a huge bureaucracy.
Right.
And you want to be as efficient as you can, but there's got to be somebody who has the time to do some thinking and planning about some of these things.
Well, I think, as you know, one of the things that saves us is that we have a significant number of capable volunteers like you who get involved and do a lot of the legwork, without necessarily getting the recognition you deserve.
Yeah, and they do, but some of that legwork needs to be done sort of institutionally, in my view.
Right.
And therefore, you do need people who can do it and have the time to do it. And
we have had some discussions informally about the idea that maybe the town could have an in-house consultant who would be available to all the departments, and would probably be assigned by Libby to take on special tasks. I've been involved in the in a work group to address the future of the island home, which was a terrific group. But in fact, we were
got David coming on next time to talk about that.
Okay, we were really lucky. We had David Worth, whose dad is a resident of the island home. And I guess he's fairly recently retired as a, he describes himself as a management consultant, but I would put a slash and then maybe a little bit of investment banking or serious financial experience. And he, I would say he did 90% of the actual work. I mean, we had a great group for discussion and a lot of interaction, a great cross-section of the community. But when the document had to be put on paper, he did it, and it looks a lot like a very professional report that you would get from a highly paid consultant.
Which is the same thing that happened with the fertilizer group.
Yeah, exactly.
One or two people carried the ball, but that's a hit or miss proposition.
Right.
And we're fortunate that you had, in both those cases, you had people who were both capable and dedicated, who wanted to do it.
And you can only ask him to do so many things. Although we're pushing the limit with David, so he's working with us on the hospital situation as well, which kind of may or may not tie into the island home.
Right, exactly.
We'd very much like to explore the possibility of having the island home combine, perhaps with Sherburne Commons or perhaps with a hospital.
What's happening with Sherburne Commons now? It's sort of in limbo, isn't it? And the sale is.
The sale is, I believe, in limbo. We, the town, were in discussions with the potential acquirer, and the things went very quiet for at least 90 days over the summer. I mean, totally quiet. And to the point where when the discussions started to percolate about the island home and the hospital or Sherburne Commons, we actually reached out to the potential acquirer and said, oh, by the way, we last corresponded back in June. We haven't heard anything for 3 months. What's going on? Then they responded. And then, of course, the next day, there was this great deal of urgency about why the town and the selectmen weren't being responsive when, in fact, we had waited 90 days and never gotten a response, and then on the 91st day, somehow we were
Unresponsive.
unresponsive. So.